Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for another New Jersey Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A for the spring 2021 season. We have three very talented filmmakers from all over the world today, and they're primarily animation films that we'll be screening, although one of the films is kind of live action mixed with animation, and one's a stop motion animation, and one is a kind of, it seems like a cell animation, but I'll introduce you to the filmmakers in a second, as well as our other panelists. But the New Jersey Film Festival was supposed to be a live festival, as was our fall. And most people know the New Jersey Film Festival is a biannual festival, so we have one in the fall and one in the spring. And the spring one takes place in January and February, and you're saying, wait a second, that's not the spring, that's winter. And so, but the thing that is, we're connected to Rutgers University, and so there's the fall and spring semester. And so we call our festivals to line up with the university calendar. So the spring 2021 New Jersey Film Festival will be taking place on select Friday, Saturday, and Sundays between January 30th and February 21st. There's 9 programs that we've set up, and we'll be showing over 40 films from around the world. We received about, including the Super 8 Festival, which is a smaller festival within the New Jersey Film Festival, we received over 600 films. And so we're going to be showing the creme de la creme. But today we're going to be talking about 3 great animation films, short films, and we have Josephine Lohoar Self, who's now in Berlin. She's a filmmaker originating from Scotland. And then we have Hamsa Hassan, who's one of the judges of the New Jersey Film Festival. Dana Lauria, she's also a judge from the New Jersey Film Festival. Sam Chegini, he's in Iran. And then we have Charli Brissey, who I believe is in Ann Arbor, correct? Yes, Ann Arbor, Michigan. So welcome everyone. Now today, normally we just interview one filmmaker for these, but I didn't want to shortchange the short filmmakers because normally we work with the feature film, documentary film, and now we want to make sure that the short films get as much attention as the features do. And the 3 animation films that we're going to be presenting at part of the New Jersey Film Festival are The Fabric of You by Josephine, and then The Trouble with Angels by Sam, and Candice Major by Charli. And I guess the best way to start off is to let each filmmaker introduce their own work briefly. So Josephine, why don't you go first and tell us about The Fabric of You?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for selecting my film. Yeah, so The Fabric of You is a short stop motion animation, and it tells the story of Michael, a grieving tailor mouse who recounts and reckons with the memories of a past lover. Yeah, that's kind of the log line.
In your description, you also say that it's based in the McCarthy era, so it's set in the United States, right, in the Bronx?
Yeah, so when I made the film, I took a lot of inspiration for the set from American graphic novelists like Art Spiegelman and also Will Ironside, is it? So even though it's sort of, I guess, quite fantastical, the film, it has humans but with mice heads. These are the characters that occupy this world. The set is loosely based on, yeah, the Bronx in the US. And also drawing parallels between these like mice characters and the sort of hovels they live in for the sets. I'm not saying those are hovels now, but like just in terms of yeah, in the 1950s.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful film, and I've never seen so many 10s for a film because our judges give out grades. They comment on the films, but they rank all the films from 0 to 10, and you know. All the films that we're talking about today scored very high, but yours scored numbers I'd never seen before. And then when I saw the film, I could understand why. So it's a really beautiful and very, very sad film in some ways, but also quite wonderful. Let's move on to Sam, and we'll come back to Josephine's film. Sam, tell us about The Trouble with Angels.
Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for this question and answer session. So The Trouble with Angels is based on Jacko Jackchick's song with the same title, the currently front singer and guitarist for King Crimson. And this is my second official music video for Jacko out of the 3 videos we've done together so far. It's the first time Jacko contacted me for this new video that we were going to produce. He mentioned The Wings of Desire by Wim Wenders, and he was inspired by the film writing the song. So obviously we talked about it, and I was a big fan of the Hollywood adoption, The City of Angels, starring Nicolas Cage. And so I watched the movie again, and he mentioned that he wants wings in the video. So I came up with this script for The Trouble with Angels, thinking like, what if, what happens that an angel wants to be among the mortals? What happens that he forgets about immortality and wants to be on earth to be among the mortals? So we have some scenes in the video that are about this concept that I had in mind. And there is a scene in the gallery where you see all these paintings of different eras. And I was thinking like, the idea was, what if, this angel played by Jacko has been always there, has witnessed many things in life. So yeah, what happens that he wants to be mortal now? So that is the question. And I wanted to, see it in different chapters.
The amazing thing is, as I rewatched all your work, I see my curatorial style working, because all of your films have connections. They all deal with kind of falls of sorts. One wants to get out of the sky. One wants to go into the sky, which leads us to Charli's movie, Candice Major, which of course is a constellation in the sky. And her film pays homage to Laika, the poor dog that was sent up by the Soviets that died orbiting around, well, I guess, I'm not really sure where she died, but maybe you can tell us more, Charli.
Yeah, of course. So Candice Major is a mix of hand-drawn animation and live action. And as you mentioned, there is this narrative of like the first dog that was sent into space in 1957. And there's a few different narratives that kind of spin off in different directions, that being one of them. And that part of the narrative comes from the beginning of this film, in which there's a writer or an artist that has some sort of writer's block who's hanging out in their living room with their dog. And then the two enter this sort of imaginative, wild, dreamy science fiction headspace where the narrative then starts to reimagine, what if Laika didn't die, this dog that was sent into space in 1957. So it's kind of a retelling of this historic event in which this first dog that was sent into space, of course, dies in space. And so this story imagines what would happen if Laika didn't die, and in this narrative, Laika crash lands onto Canis Major, this constellation in the sky, and there's apparently all of these other animals there, and there's this whole life that happens on Canis Major. And so in many ways it's based on that true story of Laika, but also this true story in which I was working on a book project and I couldn't finish it. And so I started making Canis Major a little bit as a procrastination tactic. I just started drawing these images and writing this kind of wild science fiction story to kind of get out of my own head, and then the film just became its own project.
Yeah, it's very much a meta film.
Yeah.
A film that's making itself, and we're seeing that happen. They're all wonderful films, but I'd like to bring in our other panelists. Hamsa, would you like to ask questions to any one of the filmmakers or to all of them?
I actually do have a question for all of our filmmakers, and it is, what was the most challenging scene to do for each of your films? I am very curious, and I loved all of your films, so I would love to know.
Why don't you go first, Josephine?
Yeah, I think doing stop motion, I feel like every shot is just incredibly time consuming. But I'm trying to think. There's some shots that were cut from the film, which was quite sad because it took a long time to do, like some shots and stuff. But from a technical perspective, I would say the last shot was really difficult to do. Because with stop motion, we don't tend to, obviously like filming scenes, but it was mainly just like when I'm thinking of like difficult things, I'm thinking of like the shots. So I'd say the last shot was quite hard to do just because it was a really, really long shot. And it was also me learning how to animate on lots of different rigs. So we had the camera on a piece of rig. So the majority of the shots the camera is stationary, but I had to try to learn to use this like rig to move the camera, and that's just a nightmare. And the shot was like really long, so I'd say that's probably my most challenging shot of the film. I would say.
What about the water coming out of the shower head? I was curious how you did that.
Yeah, I would say for me that was one of the easiest shots actually, because we were really lucky enough to have all the VFX in the film done by this company called Access Animation in Scotland, and we just had some fantastic VFX artists. So all I had to do for that shot was literally just like photograph the shower head, and then the VFX artists created the CGI water. So that was a really easy one for me, not so much for them, but yeah, the water looks great in it anyway. There's a puddle shot at the beginning as well.
Yeah, very nice. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut in. What about you, Sam? Most challenging show?
Well, yes, it's the most challenging project I've ever done so far. It's always, a challenge coming from Iran to do a international project like this, and especially this one. I mean, oh my God, I can't even believe that we finally did this, because the first time Jacko contacted me for this project, it was early September last year. And so by November, things were really, heavily tough. It was a very tough political situation, climate in Iran, and things were not really easy because of the, sanctions by Donald Trump on Iran. People were protesting in the streets, and as the result, the government turned down the internet. They turned the internet off, and I totally lost connection with Jacko. So I couldn't really, continue with the project and to receive the, track and continue it. But so yeah, after the internet lockdown, after the internet connection, I contacted my friend in Turkey to ask him to contact Jacko, tell him what's going on, and apologize on my behalf. And later I asked my Dutch friends who are musicians, Linden Island and Bert Riedebos, to see if they are able to go to Jacko and visit him to record some sample shots for me, because they had this little tour in England by the time, and at the time, and they kindly went to record this for me. But again, because of the internet connection, I didn't really know how to receive those. So finally the internet was back on, but it took such a long time until I received the footage, and it wasn't really, what we were hoping to receive. So Jacko and I decided to do this again, and I asked him to send me an invitation letter so that I can get a visa to go to England and record him on a green screen, because I needed that green screen footage to turn him into animation. And so he again posted the letter in an envelope, and because again the internet was off by at the time, and I received the letter, and again the embassy announced that we cannot really travel to UK or USA, so because of the again political climate, and it was cancelled. And we decided, so I called Jacko and told him that I can go to the Netherlands. It easier to receive a visa for Netherlands, or if you are able to travel, we can do this in Turkey because I don't really need a visa to go there. And the same night, we booked the flight, Jacob booked the hotel, and everything was set. He booked a green screen studio in Istanbul, and I had my ticket. I was going to the airport, and unfortunately, it was the same night that they shot down the Ukrainian plane, if you remember in the news.
Gosh.
So it was the same night that disaster happened. They accidentally shot the passenger jet out of the sky. So it was canceled, and all flights canceled. I called Jacko and told him that I cannot really travel. So eventually we shot the scenes in this studio in London. Jacko booked it, and with the help of Toby Amis, a British filmmaker and documentary filmmaker who has done the latest King Crimson documentary. He kindly offered to help us to, as a cameraman, to shoot. And I was sitting in my studio here in Kazvin, and they clamped the camera onto the monitor of the camera so that I can see what's going on. And I had the monitor screened on my projected on my screen here so that I can see what's going on. And I had to record the extra shots of this crowd scene. Again, the COVID-19 happened and the lockdown started. So I was supposed to record that in Iran, but as soon as I was going to do that, the lockdown started. And again, I had to do those remotely. So it was really a challenge to do those scenes. And again, with the help of my friends Lyndon Island and Bert Riedebus, we could record it in the Netherlands remotely. And they actually bought a green screen in the Netherlands. And so we could do this remotely in 2 countries, actually. A part of it was recorded in Istanbul with the help of my friend Ali Reza Sakaki. And because he also had this green screen little room in his at his house, and the rest of it was recorded in the Netherlands. And yeah, that's how we finally did it. I mean, Jacko and I cannot believe that we finally could make this film possible.
Yeah, in the United States, we call it Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally believe in Murphy's Law.
Yeah, crazy. Charli, tell us about your most difficult scene or shot.
I don't know if it's a specific scene or shot that comes to mind, but as I mentioned before, I was thinking of how I started making this film somewhat peripherally. I didn't even quite know I was working on a new film project as I started to draw these animations and write the script. I wasn't expecting it to become a film at first. And then at some point I just was like, what am I doing? What is this? And so I think, there's no production timeline. There was no game plan. It just kind of started happening. And so at some point that became, I guess difficult is the right word. Also exciting. I think I kind of liked working in this way. It's very different from how I would usually work. It's kind of improvising my way through it. But, it made that process unravel in a very different kind of way than I'm used to. And so at some point that was challenging. Also just working in hand-drawn animation. I've never worked in that. I've never drawn animation before. So there was a lot of learning curve in that. And then just, it's so tedious and so laborious. And so there were some days I would sit down with the stack of 300 pieces of paper that I needed to go over and kind of tune up a little bit. And those were difficult moments, realizing I'd gotten in kind of way over my head. But also I kind of learned to love that labor at some point, but yeah. So not a specific shot, but the overall process was hard.
In my experimental filmmaking class, which both Dana and Hamsa have taken, we sit down with paper cutouts and they do their own stop motion animation using Super 8 film. And we worked for an hour and a half just fooling around, really, and you ended up with maybe 15 seconds worth of imagery. And so the students realized right away how laborious animation work can be. and you're almost like a goalkeeper on a soccer team. Everybody who's a goalkeeper is a little bit crazy. Animation artists are a little bit the same. No offense, I think it's a compliment to really be able to focus and do the minutia that's necessary. But Dana, it's your turn. Your turn to ask questions to these guys.
Okay, my question is for Josephine. I'm really curious about the concept of mouses having human bodies. So I was wondering if you could just talk about your reasoning behind that styling choice.
Yeah, sure. So at the time, I was really heavily influenced by Mouse by Art Spillman, where he depicts as a graphic novel. It's fantastic. If no one's read it, I'm sure you guys have read it, but if no one's read it, read it. And it depicts Jewish people in his novel as humans with mice heads, and then Germans as cats with cats' heads and human bodies. So the graphic novel deals with, it basically looks at his father's experience, the author's father's experience as a Holocaust survivor, and it kind of deals with quite like dark themes of like what his experience was like as a Jew who was persecuted during this time, but also looked at the author's relationship with his father. So it kind of interweaved these two timelines. And I found that the graphic novel really fascinating because when you see it on the bookshelf, this graphic novel, the way it's done, it's quite a sort of highly stylized black and white drawing. You think it's not necessarily a book aimed at adults, which deals with quite a lot of like complex themes like father-son relationship, being a Jew during the Nazi rule. And I found that really moving, just how you can use these sort of anthropomorphic characters to portray quite larger sort of social political issues in work. And then I was also, looking at Animal Farm and just like how animals have been used to portray very human emotions and themes. So I was kind of just using this film as a kind of experimentation of how can I use stop motion to deal with more like adult themes of like love and grief, and how memory is affected when you lose someone. So that was kind of the springboard, I guess, for wanting to make the characters have mice heads and human bodies. Yeah, that answers your question.
Are you a fan of the Brothers Quay work?
Oh, I think I've heard of them, but I'll write.
Definitely check them out. I highly recommend. Your style is different from theirs, but the way that you move around the space reminded me of their tracking shots, he's doing stop motion. I also thought of King Kong, which is one of the first stop motion animation films that the way you move around animals, and it's all the subtleties of moving. How big were your actual sets? Probably not that big.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the scale. I've just been doing an animation at a scale which is like 1:4, but I think it was smaller than that. We worked on the with you. So the mice were like, the characters were like that big. I should know the scale like, as an animator, but like the characters were like roughly big. So the set's quite big. I think especially there's some like wide shots of the characters situated in like the Bronx sort of settings. So they were pretty big. But if you Google my name and go to my Instagram, you can see behind the scenes photos. And
yes, that's I have seen them. I just wanted the audience to get a sense of what you were working with. And the way that Charli works is doing drawing and intermingling it with live action, but it's a very frenetic pace that reminds me of the same kind of way that you move through spaces, and you go from being terrestrial to celestial. And I think we see that in all three of these works. I mean, the Trouble with Angels focuses on an angel who literally crashes to Earth, right, Sam? And I'm a big King Crimson fan. Exactly. I've seen King Crimson, at least 10 times since the early 80s. And so I did get to meet Jaco at a Q&A session. I mean, he wouldn't know who I was, but so I was aware of him. And then when I saw you submitted the film, that I was curious. I know it's part of his new release that came out just recently. and it's nice to see that your film is part of that. But I think the connections, the existential connections that all three of you have is very unique and interesting. But Hamsa, we have time for a few more questions. Do you have anything else you would like to ask these guys?
I have a question in regard to Charli's film. So at the end of your film, it mentions how the text is from your upcoming book, Dancing at the End of the World, Choreographies of Time Plus Uncertainty. So does the animation act as a visual portrayal of the book's concepts, or was the film's animation more spontaneous while incorporating those elements?
Yeah, great question. So the animation came from the writing in the book. So the writing about Leica is actually part of this book as well. It's a very experimental book project that kind of weaves theory and speculative fabulation and science fiction and personal anecdote. And so there is a lot of the writing about Leica, the space dog being sent into space, is the writing that is pulled into the film. There's a lot more of that writing. It's like a whole narrative that goes on and on and on. So the film is like this tiny little nugget. But the film really came at a moment where I was needing to step away from that book project and just because a lot of it is pretty dense theoretical work and dialogue with some Donna Haraway, who's also in the film, but some work in new materialisms. It has this kind of academic life underneath of it. And so I really just wanted to step away from that and get out of that headspace. And so the film was kind of a way to do that, but is also a part of the book. So you can sort of, as you read through the book, when the book's not out yet, when you eventually read through the book and it is out, you can kind of read the animation, the parts where the animation sort of filters in and out of it. And so they're not separate projects, but the book gets a little bit denser and is just a lot. It's a massive project, so it's much more extensive than the film. But
are you an academic, Charli?
I teach in academia, I'll say that. So I work at a Research One university that wants me to be an academic, but so I kind of live a little bit in both worlds. And the book very much lives in both worlds also. So
do you teach at the University of Michigan?
I do. I teach at the University of Michigan. Yeah.
Very cool. Great. Dana, one more for you.
Okay, my question's for Sam. I noticed that, well, your film really resembles like a painting. So I was wondering if you took inspiration from any certain art styles or from a painting in particular.
Thank you. So yes, I was actually, thinking about my latest video, The Cops Don't Know. It was our first collaboration with Jacko, and The Cops Don't Know had this comic kind of vibe into it, and for this video, Jacko and I wanted to work on something more artistic. So I studied some paintings, and again, it's a rotoscope animation. It's based on film. We first shot it, and I had Jacko on the green screen, and then I combined it with some photographs that I liked of the locations that I had in mind while writing the script. And then I kind of started working on this concept to turn it into this kind of charcoal-like animation. So it has these charcoal vibes to it. So yes, I'm a big fan of charcoal myself. When it comes to painting, I always sketch with charcoal. The first sketches always are with charcoal because it's very free. You can do anything. It's very messy. I like that about charcoal. So the main color was also inspired by The Cops Don't Know. It's a yellowish color into it. It's a monochrome kind of look to it. So I applied that to this new animation as well, and I totally liked that. It worked the first moment I rendered the first scene, and again I applied it to the whole animation, and it worked for me. So I sent it to Jacko, and we really liked to like the look of the charcoal. So we continued on
Yeah,
working on that.
the image behind you, is
Yes, that's
taken right from the film. So that's kind of what it looks
exactly.
like for those of you who haven't seen the film. Well,
Yes, exactly.
I wanted to just reemphasize to folks that the three films that we're showing are actually, two of them are on one night and one of them is on another night. And I say night, that's not true. Our films are available video on demand for 24 hours, which is, I'm just kind of stuck in the old live thing. We would normally show films at 7 o'clock. They'd be on the big screen, but now everything's virtual. And if folks would like to get information about the program and buy tickets, you can buy tickets and watch these anywhere in the world. You go to njfilmfest.com, which is our normal website, njfilmfest.com. When you get there, you will click on where it says New Jersey Film Festival Spring 2021 schedule. It's on the left-hand side, it's in red. You click on that, and that'll send you to what normally would be our festival page. But because we are now partnering with Eventive, which is based in the United States, they do streaming for festivals like ours, as well as for distribution companies like A24 and Magnolia Films and companies like that use them now, because that's the only way to get films to people in the United States. That you click on the link where it says buy tickets or get more information, and that will bounce you to our Eventive site, and then you can click around. But the program on January 31st, which is a Sunday, features Josephine's film, The Fabric of You, and Sam's film, The Trouble with the Angels. And you can start watching it at 12:01 in the morning on Sunday, the 31st of January, and you have 24 hours to complete the program. But let's say you like to do these things late at night, so you can start watching at 11:45 on Sunday evening, and you still have 24 hours to complete watching the program. There's actually a series of other short films that are quite wonderful that are part of this program. And then Charli's film is playing the following weekend on February 5th, which is a Friday. And the same thing goes. You have 24 hours to watch the program. So if you'd like more information, go to our website, njfilmfest.com, then click on where it says New Jersey Film Festival Spring 2021 schedule. Bounces you to that page, and you have to do one more click, and then you'll get to our site. And I want to say thank you to everybody here for participating in this really unique animation Q&A with Josephine, Sam, and Charli. And thank you to Hamsa and Dana for asking some scintillating questions. So thanks so much, and we'll see you guys soon. We'll have some more Q&As for you to watch anyway. Let me just do this.